on the front burner as utility workers serve notice of not supporting the push unless concerns are addressed.
Also, the Tsar, President John Mahama, says the anti-LGBT bill has expired and must be passed by Parliament once again.
Plus, Attorney General designates sparks debate on whether Ghana must return to certain public tribunals as part of justice administration. This is News Central. My name is Kemeni Amana.
And I am Mawina Egbeta. The bulletin starts right now.
Now, President John Dramani Mahama says the Antigay bill has expired and Parliament must, as a result, commence the legislative process. So once again, this comes following concerns about the state of the bill after former President Nana Dankwa Kufuor failed to sign it into law before exiting office.
Ghana in February 2024 joined a growing list of African countries opting to take a strong stance on LGBTQ activities as its legislative body passed the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. The proposed law had been heavily criticized while equally receiving significant endorsement from various interest groups. President Kufuor, however, opted not to sign the bill into law following its passage. His office actually informed Parliament not to transmit the bill, pointing out 2 cases challenging the proposed law at the Supreme Court. The Apex Court in December 2024 dismissed both cases, indicating that the bill was yet to become law and could therefore not be challenged at that stage.
It is unclear whether Parliament, after that decision, transmitted the bill or it remained in the House. But you know, that has the potential of impacting the status of the bill. That is, whether the bill died with the previous Parliament or it is within the confines of the executive and therefore can be assented to by the new President, John Dramani Mahama.
The issue of LGBTQ is still an issue that is pending, and it is our hope that this President will sign the bill, but if he doesn't sign it, the bill will expire, and it means that the next Parliament must look at it again. And of course, like I said, we're not people who promote that kind of attitude. The Bible is very clear on issues like that, and so we'll continue to remain faithful to our spiritual guidance.
Legislator Haruna Idrisu believes President Mahama can take charge of the situation.
I have some ideas on LGBTQ, but I'm yet to share it with the President as to how he can re-own the bill and get national consensus around it and consistent with the laws of Ghana and the Constitution. There is a way to deal with it. But to make a comment here would mean that I'm reducing it to a religious matter, but it's certainly a social, cultural problem for our country that collectively we will resolve to preserve our values as a people.
It is unclear at this stage what steps promoters of the bill will be taking.
Well, that was then. We can now hear from the President speaking on the need for the bill to be passed once again.
If you remember, there was a court case that injected the Speaker from forwarding it to the President, and also restrained the President from receiving the bill. Eventually, that case was disposed of in December, I think on the 18th or so. Yeah, so it meant that the injunction had been cleared. But as far as I know, the bill did not get to the President for assent. And so the convention is that all bills that are not assented to before the expiration of the life of Parliament expire. And so that bill effectively is dead, it has expired. I don't know what the promoters of the bill intend to do, but I do think that we should have a conversation on it again so that all of us, if we decide to move that bill forward, move it forward with a consensus. And probably it shouldn't be a private member's bill. It probably should be a government bill with governments behind it after consultation with all the stakeholders to see how we're able to move this.
Well, President John Dramani Mahama there in that engagement with the clergy. Let's connect with Komla Kluche, our Presidential Affairs correspondent. Komla, tell us a bit more, really, about this engagement the President had with the clergy, just before we talk about issues to do with our security chiefs. Hello, Komla. Well, it would appear Komla cannot hear me, but we also know that the President had a meeting with the security chiefs before heading up north. We'll talk about that also. We also know that the President has spoken about how the Antigay bill needs to go back to Parliament after its expiration for the 9th Parliament to rework on it and then back to him, which is the question many of us have been asking. Komla Kluche is back. Let's try him again. Komla, good afternoon to you. Well, it would appear Komla cannot hear me still. How about we go into that meeting now and bring you some sights and sounds?
I want to assure you that we are going to continue with even greater zeal to ensure that we maintain the security and stability of this country. I want to assure you of our unflinching support and dedication, as I said, to duty, and make sure that we help you to achieve or realize your objective of resetting Ghana. Mr. President, once again, thank you very much for receiving us this morning. We are grateful, and we wish you the best. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me thank all of you for the work that you've done for our motherland in terms of keeping our people safe and protecting both internal and external security. We should have held this ceremony on the 7th, immediately after the inauguration, but as you know, we're overwhelmed by visitors, and some of those who came on the 7th left just a few days ago. They enjoyed Ghana so much that they were not in a hurry to leave. But I want to thank you for the good work. This last election has cemented our reputation as the leading democracy in Africa. And a good part of the thanks go to you, the security services, who have maintained the peace. We still have threats to our peace that we must continue to look at internally and externally. Internally, to do with chieftaincy disputes and some incidents of armed robbery and things like that. Externally, to do with the threats on our northern borders. And so we cannot let our vigilance down. There should be no vacuum. And so you must all continue to work, as the CDS said, zealously, to make sure that there's no breach of the peace in the country. And so I want to thank you for all the work you're doing. We're working hard to set up the Council of State so that we can start to put the controlling boards of all the services and all the government parastatals in place. And so once we have the Armed Forces Council and the Prisons Council and all of them set up, all your service councils, we're sure that we'll begin to look at how to manage things in respect of any outstanding issues that exist. But in the meantime, I expect you all to work very closely together like you've been doing, and continue to keep the country safe for all of us. And so I want to thank you for attending to our call at quite short notice, and to ask you to continue to work.
President John Dramani Mahama in that engagement with our security chiefs. Earlier, you heard the Chief of Defense Staff, General Opom Prepra. Let's connect with Komla Kluche again and find out what the latest is on this matter. Komla, good afternoon to you. We know that after that meeting with the security couples, the president is headed up north. Talk to us about that trip.
John Mahama has arrived in Boku as I speak with you, but he's yet to get to the palace of the Bokunaba. But this is how the palace looks like. A lot of people are already gathered here. Party functionaries, traditional rulers, and various stakeholders are here awaiting the arrival of His Excellency the President, who intends to be having an engagement with these people for a lasting solution to the conflict in the Boku enclave. It becomes what normally this itinerary looks like, or the protocol looks like, is that he goes into the palace over there in that story building. That is the private room of the Bokunaba, where he'll be holding that private meeting with him before coming to the church where the chief and then the subjects are gathered. And the details of this is not yet known, but what we know for sure is that during the campaign, he made a promise to the Bokunaba and the people of Boku that he was going to prioritize lasting peace in this enclave. We are aware how much the state has spent in terms of security for this conflict area, and how, in recent times it appears, just like His Excellency the President said during the campaign era, that whenever a particular party is in office, that is when tension really rises in there. But he is saying that it doesn't matter whichever party is in government now. His ideal is to see lasting solutions return to the Boku enclave so that business would boom as usual. You would also recall that one of the things that the chief said was with respect to him creating a region out of this enclave. The Boku area is predominantly a border town or a border area, and it has influx of people from all around the neighboring countries who come there. And one of the calls he's made to the security chiefs is for them to heighten security around the borders. One of the means of which the security situation will be dealt with to a very large extent. We can only wait to see how the engagement is going to be, like how frank it will be, and possibly what solution it may be preferring to what appears to be a very, very lasting or age-old security situation here in Boku.
Very well. Komla, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much. Komla Kluche is our presidential affairs correspondent.
Let's return to that earlier subject in relation to the anti-LGBTQ+ bill and what the President, John Mahama, has been saying in relation to that. Adam Senanu is a leading member of the National Coalition for Proper Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. He's joined us right now for a quick reaction to the latest we're learning from the President. Mr. Senanu, I appreciate that you could speak to us. Are you surprised to learn that the bill could not be transmitted even after the Supreme Court judgment, creating a situation where the entire legislative process would have to take place again?
Well, yes, on one hand, there's a bit of surprise. I assume that would take its natural course. But let me also point out that Parliament had finished its work on the 28th of February 2024 when the 276 unanimously passed it. Parliament had finished its work, sent it to the President. The President refused to receive it. So there's a technical lacuna we need to address. And so when the President says that it died with the Parliament, I don't think that's a very accurate description of what happened. And I think that that's an issue that needs to be taken up. What happens when future presidents attempt to do that, because what they had done is to interfere with the constitutional processes as outlined. So that's an issue. I don't think that one can say it died with the parliament or parliament failed to complete its task. I think that that's a technical issue to be resolved. Having said that, I'm quite concerned. It's early days yet, but the president should not underestimate the resolve of the citizens of this country. Over 93% of whom have said they support this bill, to make sure it's passed. I think the suggestion that it did not have exhaustive or enough support, or it must be a government pushed bill, is neither here nor there. There at least 5 times I heard the president saying he will assent to this bill, which meant that in its current state, it was clear that what it constituted was sufficient for it to be passed. We should not begin to raise issues which seem to mean that not enough people were supporting it. I think that would be taking us down a trajectory which would seem to imply that he's shifting goalposts and doesn't want to pass the bill.
I mean, what are your suspicions with these latest comments he's making? Because, like you've rightly pointed out, he's reiterated his position in wanting to assent into this bill. Suddenly, some will want to make the argument that the narrative and the conversations from him is beginning to change. Are you sensing that perhaps his resolve in opposition is changing now that he's president?
Yes, that's a concern, and I'm saying it's early days, so when we intend to meet over the next 24, 48 hours, we probably are going to ask for audience so that we clarify, because sometimes it could be the communication. But we don't expect a president who committed more than 5 times, at least at my count, to assenting to this bill in its current form, to suddenly begin to say, maybe if it's a government bill, it will pass, and maybe wider consultation. Please. 3 years of work, the highest number of public members, 176, traveled to other jurisdictions, in-person and virtual engagements with even pro-LGBTQ groups. Then ended up in, and it was about 6 months of the second hearing where over 100 amendments that were tabled, that were debated, and that were agreed upon before the consensus passing on 28 February 2024. This has been the most thorough, at the cost of the peace-loving, culturally proud, and, faith-sensitive people of this country. Let's not begin to change the narrative. I am hoping that the president is still on board. Let's pass this for the good people of the country.
Just finally, with respect to now that the process is expected to kickstart all over again, like you've rightly mentioned, this bill which we're learning did not make it to the presidency, has gone through extensive consultation and the likes. How long would you be expecting that the new processes will go through, the expectation of the time duration, so possibly it could be passed?
Well, there are 2 options, as I tried to intimate earlier. The first approach would be that, look, the bill had finished its work in Parliament. The president was to receive either assent, identify corrections, or refer to the Council of State. Now, if technically we are right that the Parliament had finished its work, the president will have to look at it and just say, I'm assenting to it, and there's no issue.
Well, that's the hurdle which he says that it wasn't transmitted, hence it died with the 8th Parliament. The expectation is that the process will have to start all over again.
Yes, and that's where I'm saying that we are disagreeing with that. We are saying there's a technical issue to be addressed, and we'll be highlighting it for the president's attention. As far as we are concerned, Parliament had actually finished its work. So that statement is not as accurate as it ought to be. So we need to make that decision, and we need to actually look at that scenario and address it for the future. So that's the first approach. The second approach is we all agree that the president looks at it and says that, look, there are a few corrections, there are a few areas that we think maybe in terms of sentencing, etc., we think we want to adjust this and that, which means we must go back to Parliament. Because it is the 9th Parliament and not the one that started, it means the process will have to start from the beginning. In that instance, which is the second approach, I and many of us will think that there will be an expedited approach. It will still go through the various groups. But because by and large, the content has already been agreed upon, perhaps within a period of not more than a year, we should be able to conclude this process and get it passed. So there are these two options that, in my mind, are technically viable based on what the Constitution says.
Right there, Mr. Senator. I appreciate that you could speak to us on this, and I'm sure, particularly on the first one, we should be getting a bit more with respect to whether or not it died with the 8th Parliament. It's one of the arguments that's been made by actually the proponent, Roxy Nelson Dafiamekpo, saying that that interpretation ought to be provided by the Supreme Court. We'll seek to subject that to a bit more, but I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon. Let's try and move on to some other stories right now, because the Public Utility Workers Union, PUW, says it stands ready to assist government find a solution to the challenges facing ECG in a sustainable manner. This comes in the wake of the Energy Minister-designate John Jinapor indicating government's commitment to private sector participation in the management of ECG. Now let's look at the statement as issued by PUW following the revelations as made by the Energy Minister-designate, where they, amongst many other things, are raising quite a number of concerns, and we'll seek to walk you through it right now. And what we know, for starters, is in relation to the roadmap, as announced yesterday by the Energy Minister-designate, there's a setting up of committee of experts. The committee is expected to release a framework for the privatization. Now, after all of that is done, the selection of the private sector partner is to be done through competitive bidding. It will be an open process, one that Dr. Jinapor stressed on, because yesterday we got word as well that he had finished his PhD, and so rightly so, a doctor in his own right. Dr. Jinapor stressing quite strongly that it will be open competitive bidding, and the timelines 6 to 12 months. We got the indication that the Public Utilities Workers Union are strongly resisting this. Daniel Opoku is our Labour Affairs correspondent. He's with the Public Utilities Workers Union right now. Let's connect with him, find out really what the concerns are from the Workers Union. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us. What is the arguments they are making against this attempts by government to privatize ECG?
Right, so good afternoon to you, Bawina. When you listen to the leadership of the Public Utilities Workers Union, basically, they are very much concerned about the privatization. And let's not forget that this is not the first time PUW is raising similar these concerns. In 2015, 2016, when the part of ECG was privatized, PUW raised the same concerns where we saw a lot of agitations nationwide. And now the issue is resurfacing again. And they have the view that they are also, once again, against the privatization, and they believe government should open a lot of broader discussions and also meet major stakeholders. And PUW is a major stakeholder when it comes to the energy sector. They want the government to meet them. They want the president to meet them, or the sector minister, Dr. John Jinapor, should be able to meet them to have a thorough discussion and also proffer other models they believe that UCG could deploy to be able to resolve the inefficiencies to help UCG bounce back on track, to also facilitate in terms of its revenue collection. So PUW is asking government to halt the discussions, to halt the privatization process, engage them, and see what other alternatives they will be able to offer to government.
But Daniel, the minister-designate outlined processes where there's a setting up of a committee, and that committee is expected to engage all relevant stakeholders in coming up with a framework which will guide the government in deciding to privatize ECG. Is it the case that they haven't got the intrinsic details, reason for which they are asking for government to engage them first? Because the process suggests there will be engagement.
Right, so, when we critically listen to the leadership, in 2015, 2016, when there was a similar committee which was set up, PUW was not actually engaged, but they had to officially find themselves before the committee. Now, this time around, when the committee is being set up, once again, they don't have the representatives of the committee. That is the reason the Harrison government to be able to also engage them as a key power sector, as a key player within the sector. We want to go to UCG now. PUW has 8,000 members at UCG. So it means that PUW has a lot of membership within UCG. So government fails to also, the committee which has been set up fails to engage PUW, obviously you are going to get this some level of agitation coming from them. And I even asked the General Secretary of PUW that after the current minister or the minister designate said The ECG within 6 months with Tarita, what has been the agitation, what has been the temperature within the membership of ECG. And the report is telling me that the people are not too happy, and they are not too happy, and they are trying to recall what happened in 2016. They believe that if government does not go to the proper channels, obviously there's a possibility of going to have a lot of agitations this time around, unlike what happened in 2016. So they are just hoping that the committee which has been set up will be able to engage them, also offer other alternatives. Let's not also forget that when they meet school, obviously they may have to meet the Trade Union Congress as a body, so that organized labor as a body to be able to also get their buy-in, for them to be able to do the facilitate the privatization process. So
right
that means they will have agitation on the labor front.
Right then, Daniel, I'm sure we'll get a lot more subsequently, but I appreciate that's our Labour Affairs correspondent, Daniel Opoku. Well, the former managing director of ECG, Samuel Dubik Mahama, meanwhile holds the view that it is necessary for a fully independent entity to manage distribution of power.
I do admit, when people say there's a leadership deficit, fine. But there are pragmatic business decisions that have to be taken. And you have to start solving the problem from a certain standpoint. For example, as being MD, when things didn't make sense, I called the requisite people to go into it. I asked KPMG to do an audit, both of the upstream and then the system losses of ECG. The upstream had its own, dynamics that it brought out, which now, from what Uncle Kek is saying, shows that it's very prominent that we need an independent power operator, an independent market operator, totally. Because when you have this amount of, generation in your system, and you don't have someone who sits in between to call to make sure that the power is distributed right, or the right amount of power is sent to certain areas, then there's some inequality that would come into the game.
That's Samuel Dubik Mahama. He spoke on Agenda last night. Well, a former chief executive officer of the Volta River Authority has justified the importance of excess power capacity in the power sector value chain. I was speaking on TV3's news analysis and current affairs show Agenda. Engineer Kek Kofi argued that expensive power is better than no power at all.
100, so 4,440 megawatts. And the current available generation is just about 5,000 megawatts. So whatever we said was too much is the one which has taken us over the years. But let me tell you, as the country develops, you need this reserve margin, you need this other sort of generation to be able to manage the system properly. So anybody who says, oh, they brought in too much, we saw the projection. At that time, the growth in energy demand was more than 10%. We saw that the growth rate, and that's exactly what was done. And I don't think it's wrong. And today, as we speak, if nothing is done immediately, we'll see that problem coming back again. Expensive power is better than no power. As we speak today, all the plans that we've been talking about that they came online, they've been running for the past 3-4 years.
Speaking on the same show, Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Ben Boachi, believes a distribution chain must be handled privately.
See, the problem is this. Either it is Gridco or VRA that sells power. All of them have their quota, and they account for the revenues that are coming to them. What goes to ECG as a bulk purchaser of power is what has been an issue for us to account for that volume of power that is sent to ECG for distribution. And our contention over time has been that if you are tracking revenues, the revenues don't come in isolation. There are variables that drive the revenues. All right, there are adjustments that are made by PURC that have to be accounted for. The cost of the power that they've given to you and how much you have to recover over time. So you have to track all those variables to be able to communicate to the public whether you are performing or you're not. So if your revenue requirements have grown over time from $1 billion to $2 billion, we are not only looking at the nominal adjustment in revenue collection, but we are looking at how you're meeting your revenue target. And if you check the indicators and the numbers, it clearly shows that ECG has been underperforming year on year, and the data is clear on that. And how we deal with that has always been our concern, and you look at how the inefficiencies manifest, it's a simple matter of not being able to sell power and collect the revenues. Meters that are faulty over the period that we need to replace them. Of course, we know, and if you drill down also to the efficiency of even the meters that we procure, you have problems with it. How do we have that situation and we keep procuring meters after meters and we don't get the problem fixed? We have ECG staff who are prominent in the illegal trade of power, and we don't have a solution to addressing that challenge, to be able to bring in the revenue, to be able to pay the value chain. So those are, for me, fundamental issues that we've not been able to address, and it crystallizes in the problems with machinery, because if you don't have enough money, you cannot replace faulty equipment. If you don't have enough money, you cannot pay for fuel supplies, you can pay for IPP costs. Solution is really the distribution end, and the data supports that.
That's the Executive Director of ASEP, Ben Boachi. And the conversation surrounding the privatization of ECG will continue to go on, but it will take us on to our very first break here on News Central. When we return back to the court on the argument of whether or not public tribunals will best serve the interests of this country, we have details if you stay with us.
Attorney General and Minister of Justice designate Dr. Dominic Ayeni has justified government's plans to reintroduce regional tribunals. Speaking on his re-establishment, Dr. Ayeni explained that while it is constitutional, it will encourage citizenry participation and will be duly regulated per human rights laws captured in the African Watch report.
We want to go back and align with the internal logic of Article 125, Clause 1, that there must be participation by ordinary people in the administration of justice. If you recall, all the tribunals, district tribunals, circuit tribunals, regional tribunals, had a chairperson or chairman and two who was, mandatorily required to be a lawyer, and two, other persons who were non-lawyers selected from the community. So aside the traditional jury system that allows, ordinary citizens to participate in the administration of justice in a limited fashion, the PNDC, in its wisdom, broadened public participation in the administration of justice through the tribunal system. In resetting Ghana, we will reset it in accordance with the 1992 Constitution. And the 1992 Constitution is very clear, that the sovereign power of Ghana rests in the people of Ghana, in whose name and for whose welfare the powers of government should be exercised in accordance with this Constitution. Governmental powers includes the powers exercised by the judiciary of our land. That includes the public tribunals. I believe that it is not your view, honorable member, that the public tribunals would not or are not part of the judiciary. They are part of the chapter on the judiciary. And so they will be bound by Chapter 5, the human rights provisions, and the entire Constitution, guided by the directive principles of state policy in Chapter 6. And so the proposal in our manifesto is to re-establish the regional tribunals.
Well, now, let's tell you more about that 2024 manifesto of the NDC, in which we find the proposal for the tribunals. We know that the party says it will support the Chief Justice to establish regional tribunals provided for under Article 142 of the Constitution and pass a law to reintroduce the community and circuit tribunals first established under the Courts Act 1993, Act 459, but abolished under the Courts Amendment Act 2002, Act 620. Well, let's have a quick chat on the back of this. Christian Hesse is a legal practitioner who's joining us for a bit more on this. Christian, I appreciate you talking to us this afternoon, but perhaps for the more younger generation, let's start off with what a tribunal is. What is it?
Yes, thanks for having me. A tribunal, simpliciter, is a judicial forum where matters of public interest are heard, whether criminal or civil.
Why do you think it's become such a thorny issue, particularly at the vetting of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice designate?
I probably would shudder to say it is rather not thorny, but it is probably a policy initiative that the Honorable designate wants to have done when he is confirmed as the substantive Attorney General. The tribunal system is not alien to our judicial system. We have had it before, and just as you rightly said, it was abolished at a point in time. We saw much more of the tribunal system during the revolutionary times and the passage of laws to see how best they could be regulated upon until the time that they became obstinate. now obsolete. Now, it is a situation that upon the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution, if you look up at Chapter 11, which deals with the judiciary, we have, or the law indicates that the law emanates from the people, and the judiciary administrates law on behalf of government. Now, if you look further, it deals with the fact that we have two main streams of courts. That's the superior court and then the lower court. And just as we know, the superior court is made up of the Supreme Court and then the Court of Appeal and then the High Court. Now, at the High Court, juxtaposing it is also the regional tribunals. Now, if you further come to the B part, it also deals with lower courts or tribunals as may be established by Parliament, and whatever powers as it may be should be prescribed as such. So this deals with Article 126. And so what the Honorable Designate is saying, he is seeking to see how we could have inclusive justice delivery. But inclusive justice delivery is still ongoing. If you look at our juvenile courts, we have assessors sitting together with the substantive district judge to adjudicate over matters. Mm-hmm. In criminal settings to matters, we have the jury system also running. So already we have inclusive justice delivery ongoing in the country. But probably he is seeking to rule out further inclusion of the populace in justice delivery.
Indeed, Christian, which brings me to the point of debate during the vetting process about why the new government will want to bring the tribunals back at all the levels that we have discussed already. So then the question then will be whether or not these tribunals will be necessary to our justice delivery system at all. What would you say about that?
The problem is that these tribunals, they are going to run quite parallel with some of the courts that we have. And it's a question of money because and infrastructure, because honestly, we already have infrastructural deficits as far as our court systems or court infrastructures are concerned. When you look at our high court, and mind you, in law we say the high court is one, but we have the Chief Justice has through working with other administrators.
Oh, looks like we lost Christian there. Christian Malm. Right, Christian, finish that point you were making.
Has been able to put high court at advantage geographical regions, which is to augment, but it is still not enough. And I believe that if we are to reset Ghana, then such infrastructure should rather be reach the bottom stratum of justice delivery to augment what is currently in place. Because you go to places and you wonder whether such a place is worthy of a court to house such proceedings.
Right. So, Christian, you don't think that we need them now? Is that the case?
I believe that we should look at the critical needs. If it is just about inclusion of the public, I would believe that will not be necessary. But already we have high courts, we have district courts, and we have circuit courts that are dilapidated, and which would need finance, serious funding to take care of it. Don't go too far away. Just travel to Tema. Yeah, and even at the the court complex, the high court complex, we have air conditions that are not working. Sometimes lawyers would have to take their gowns off. Judges, some of them, the heat is quite unbearable. We have to open places up. And if you further travel into the hinterland, don't go far, just go. You go to Kufuor,
right?
You go to Agyekum. So I'm saying that we have infrastructural deficit. To start up with new courts when the already existing ones need attention, then we should prioritize over it.
Right. Christian,
prioritize over the critical needs.
Indeed. Christian, we'll leave our conversation here. Thank you so much for talking to us. Christian Malm-Hesse is a legal practitioner taking us across the regions on Regional Hub.
We're starting from the central region and parts of Accra because for many who live close to the Weija Dam, residents of Tetegu in the Weijagbawa municipality have not had water supplied to the community for several weeks. The situation is making life uncomfortable for the dwellers who are calling on the Ghana Water Company Limited to provide an immediate solution. Akwesiado is on this beat for us, and that's why I said from the central region to parts of Accra. Akwesi covers the central region for us. He's joined us right now with a bit more in terms of the details. And you're seeing in your short what the pressure is like for persons who live very close to the Weija Dam. Akwesi, tell us how long this particular situation has persisted.
Okay, so since the first week of December, this has been the situation in some parts of Weija and then the main Tetegu community. And the problem has lasted until now. It's become difficult for dwellers of Tetegu and its environs to have water. And so now what residents are doing is that they are either relying on water from water tanker services, or they are using sachet water in whatever they do, both for commercial and then domestic purposes.
And what have authorities been saying? What explanations have they offered as reason why we're seeing water pressure like this in areas that are quite close to the treatment plant?
Okay, so first of all, we have been speaking to residents of Tetegu, and they are telling us that they are not comfortable with the current situation, especially when there's an outbreak of cholera in some parts of the country. They are raising concern about the possible dangers of them, becoming victims of sanitation and hygiene-related diseases. And so they want the Ghana Water Limited to take immediate steps to remedy the situation. So let's listen to some of what residents of Tetegu have been telling us.
Let's first hear from the Ghana Water Company, and then we'll hear from the residents. Let's take a listen to the reaction from officials.
So we sent a letter to the District Assembly, the municipal chief executive, to intervene. We know that they grant permits for buildings, and so if there's a building close to a pipeline and it's causing danger, fixing it is causing danger to our staff, it's just okay that we let them know. So we sent a letter to them. I even have a copy here I can share. And for them to come in, for us to know what to do so that we can send water to Tetegu, fix the problem and send water to Tetegu.
And so, Akwesi, that's the Ghana Water Company officials. Are the residents pleased? You tell us.
Okay, so that was Soleta for me, and he is the Accra West Regional Communications Manager for the Ghana Water Limited. And let me say that the Ghana Water Limited is unable to solve the problem immediately because there is a storey building that is sitting right on the water line that serves Tetegu and its environs. And so the residents of Tetegu are very worried, and they want authorities to take immediate steps in solving this particular challenge for them.
Somebody had a problem with it last year when they were trying to repair the pump. So at this time, where it is positioned at the Weija Junction itself is a problem to them. because they are finding it difficult to divert the water over there. I need to keep long. They have even written to the head office, but they are not even minding them. Over here at Tetegu here, now, over 4 weeks now, we are not getting water. When you open our tap right now, you will see that we don't have water. And we have, it is a problem. We have kids at home now. Schools are not in section, so we have our kids at home. We use a lot of water. When you even toilet, how to flush is a problem.
Yeah, I can see that from sometimes now, let's say around the Christmas time to now, I can't feel for water in my house. Because I don't remember the time that I sleep well safe. If I sleep, like getting to 1 a.m. or 2, I have to wake up and put a gallon. I have to get some small water to bath myself and bath my children. I'm finding it very difficult. I don't know the time that I use water as the way I'm supposed to use it. So that is the main challenge now for me in my house and with my family.
The water situation currently is not a pleasant one. I think for a couple of weeks now, almost 4 weeks, we've not had enough water flowing through our taps. And then the checks from Ghana Water says that they have a major issue at Weja Junction that they are trying to resolve. A couple of questions that were asked give us some few answers. And what they said was that the problem was a major one. And then the last time they tried to solve it, I think someone lost their life or so.
And so, resident, Akwesi, thank you for these details. I'm sure we'll follow up on this subject and bring you a lot more on this. That's Akwesi, my colleague in the central region, but following this development for us in the Tetegu area.
We can now take you to the Ashanti region, where former regional minister Simon Osei Mensah says he cannot be blamed for the state of the minister's residence and presidential villa. A recent visit by TV3 to the site shows the two facilities are fast deteriorating following years of not being occupied. The former minister says the region simply lacks the funds to renovate the place, hence the current state. Ibrahim Abubakar has been following the story in the Ashanti region. He's now joining us with more details of the situation. Ibrahim, good afternoon to you. What other details has the former minister been sharing with you?
Well, if you read the statement by the former Ashanti Regional Minister, Simon Osei Mensah, he clearly indicated that since he assumed office in February 2017, he has not occupied his official bungalow. And so they left it as it is. But then he said they also met it in a bad state, and the funds to be able to renovate it to an habitable status was not there, and they had to even write to the government, and the president approved 6 million Ghana cedis for the renovation of the presidential villa and also the regional minister's bungalow. But eventually only 400,000 cedis was released to them, and that money was not enough for them to have renovated those two facilities. So they had to use it to renovate the Yasantua building, which is also a conference center that is within the premises of the presidential villa and also the regional minister's bungalow. And that one has been in use since 2017. Now, regarding two additional buildings that were very close to the presidential villa, some two green houses, he said those facilities, though, were completed at the time, but there were issues, and officially those two buildings had not been handed over to the government by the contractor because there were some outstanding arrears that they needed to pay. So they couldn't have used those facilities. But these are facilities that when you go there currently, you realize that the frame, the wooden frame, or the window and the door frame have all been taken over. The air conditioning there has been stolen. Some of the chairs are there rotting away and the like. So the question that many have been answering was that even if those facilities at that time had not officially been handed over to the government, couldn't the government have paid the outstanding arrears so that they will take charge and use it? So the issue has been very topical, especially when the regional minister released his statement today. In fact, we have even seen some members of the New Patriotic Party condemning this. They said, in no way should this be justified, since these were taxpayers' money, and even at then, if we needed 6 million Ghana cedis to renovate those facilities, it means now we will need 30 million or more Ghana cedis to renovate same facility. So most people do not understand why the minister would abandon such facility and move into another government bungalow and use some funds to renovate those bungalows that are not even of the official residence of the minister. So people have been asking questions, and they expect the new regional minister, who will soon be announced by the new administration, to do the needful by ensuring that they maintain these facilities, they put them in good use, since at the end of the day, it is the taxpayers' money that has been used to put up these facilities.
Thank you so much for talking to us, Ibrahim Abubakar, Ashanti region correspondent. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, a few more stories. We'll call it a day.
A bit more stories for you. Just before we leave, the Trade Union Congress says President Mahama should roll out a proper redeployment system for workers who may be affected following the collapse of some ministries. Now, according to the TUC, the president should also consider a compensation regime for workers in case they are laid off.
President John Dramani Mahama has announced the mainstreaming of some ministries. The ministries have now been reduced from 30 to 23. All this geared towards achieving a lean government. But some economic think tanks, such as Imani Africa, said the president could consider layoffs to attain the lean government promised. President John Dramani Mahama is quoted to have said that there will not be any layoffs after the mergers and scrapping. The Trade Union Congress has backed the president for the move, but the Secretary General Joshua Ansah said the president should roll out a proper redeployment system to absorb the workers who may be affected.
President or the government must find a way of redeploying those people
so that they will not lose their job. Because losing job means that you are also increasing the economic woes of those people to affect their family, to affect everyone. And it also affect the economy and the people they live with. Because it's like if they don't get work to do, they may find any means of getting their family have an enjoyable life. And that may result in corruption.
He proposed a compensation plan to serve as a stopgap measure to address the difficulties.
Compensation is fine. Because compensation, how long would that compensation take you? Even they pay them 1 million each, for how long? It is better to be on job and be paid every month than to go and take even 1 million Ghana cedis and within 2 weeks it's gone and your life becomes miserable. So we as Labour, we agitate for continuous job. I'm not interested in compensation. I'm interested in staying on the job and being paid every month so that you can also take care of your family every month.
As Joshua Ansai is the Secretary General of the TUC, making a case for workers not to be laid off, even as some ministries are collapsed. But I really do not think there will be a layoff.
Well,
because of civil service.
If the purse is, is wages and salaries take a chunk of the purse and the purse is bloated, you've got to cut some people off for productivity's sake.
Well, you may never know what the president will do. Talk of the president, he's in Boko as we speak, seeking to start mediation talks between factions, and he's meeting community members at this particular point in time. We're expecting him to address the people when he's done. Stay with us. When that address starts, we'll be here to provide you details of that. I am Mawina Agbeta.
I am Kameni Amano. Next is the Afternoon Show. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.